Hello, we are here today, Tanya Levy and myself, to share with you the background of the affirmations for the Body and BioField deck, as well as the book. And what we want to share with you are some of the ways that we've been using the card deck and the reason or how we put the card deck together. And we want to just bring that forward with what we're doing. All right, so Tanya and I have started by bringing a card forward because everything that we do always has an intention. And so before we get started, this is the card that was pulled, which is for thoracic 12. Balance is necessary for success. Be sure to live multidimensionally with all intentions, body, mind, and spirit, equally focused on your life and your purpose. And it's the note of A sharp. And this one comes from the spine deck. So that sets us off for our intention for today. And I'm so happy to have Tanya here to be able to share all this conversation. How are you doing, Tanya?
Oh, it's good. It's been a beautiful sunny day here in Cape Breton, and I did some gardening this afternoon, so it's all good.
Okay, so our deck and book, here's the cover, and our book has the same cover, is the Affirmations for the Body and the BioField, and it says your key to the spiritual points. And we started out with the idea of working with the spine, and then our project grew to 4 decks. So we're going to talk across those 4 decks. But the important part at the beginning here is the artwork, because Tanya is the mastermind behind all of the fabulous pictures that we have on each card. So Tanya, do you want to share how it came to be with the artwork and then the process that we've done with the artwork?
Well, my name's Tanya Levy, but I'm also known as Heart Lady, and I got the nickname Heart Lady when I was in a group called Small Stones, which is a writing group where we basically uh, shared small pieces of writing that supported mindfulness. And in this group, I started to post pictures of heart clouds that I found because I'm always taking pictures because it's a way to be mindful and present and grounded. And so they nicknamed me Heart Lady. And then they started posting pictures of hearts on my Facebook page and saying, saw this heart and thought of you. So it was maybe a stone heart or a picture of a heart in the sky. And so that kind of began my creation of healing art. And what I do is I take pictures of trees and sky and water and light. And then I form them into digital art. And every piece of art I create has the intention of providing healing and balance to the person that looks at it. You can see that it's just a pretty picture, but if you choose to receive the healing, it's there for you to receive. And I think it's a way to um, bring another dimension to the healing process. I'm a counselor by day, and in that process, it's mostly talk therapy and some somatic work that I do with people to remind them to breathe and where they may be feeling stress in their body. And the art is a way to balance and focus and bring healing into our lives. And so Michelle and I were talking one day, and she said, well, what if we created a healing deck for the body in the energy field or the biofield that surrounds us with your art and put affirmations on the back and healing intentions? And I went, okay, sure. And so this, for example, is one of the cards from the spinal resonance deck, and this card is number 1. It says, when walking in the straight line, be sure to find awareness for what has been, what is now, and what is possible as you move forward. Together, experience and knowledge continue to guide and support. And so if you look at this picture, when I look at it, I see a woman, like a tree spirit, and this was originally a picture of trees. And I think that what's important is that when I create healing art, the photo often tells me what it wants to be and the message it wants to send, but that message can change depending on the day and what I'm experiencing. And it's really important that when you look at the card, you see what you see, because I always ask people when I do readings with them or offer the art to them, what they see, because what I see isn't necessarily what you see. I see something when I create it, but I create it because I love to create, and it's fun to create, and it's just, and creativity is a way that balances me and my energy. And you may see something completely different. And we also put some of it into canvases. So this is it bigger. And even when you look at it bigger, see, now I see like another face here versus the face up here, and I see more the colors of red. And I think that when we think of the lumbar spine, which is down where we sit, red is often the color associated with that part of us, especially if we look at the chakras, and it's a way to be rooted. All the pictures are pretty much taken in Cape Breton, unless I was traveling at the time to the mainland or to another province. And so they could be a sunset I saw that was interesting, or how the light was going through trees or flowers in my garden that I chose to put into something more creative and more colorful. And a lot of people, when they look at the picture, ask me, well, what was it to begin with? It's not always easy to answer that because I have 180,000 photos. And a lot of them I layer, and then I use programs to um, add color and to mirror them. And I think the bottom line is the picture that you see is whatever you think it is. And however that healing affects you, because you may get a sense of like this particular card has the affirmation of looking past, present, or future. You might look at it today and get a message about your past and something you need to let go of that no longer serves you. You might look at it tomorrow and get a message for today, what you need to focus on. And you may look at it next week and you may see the dream and the vision you have for your future. And so I feel the cards have infinite potential, infinite healing potential.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the colors are really vibrant. That's the other piece. So when we look at the power of color just by itself, and the way that the colors layer or the complement each other, this provides the
right, because this is one
opportunity
I
to
just
play.
recently made. And so it's hard with the lighting in here, but I see it as a fairy wing or a butterfly wing. But you're right, the purples and blues are very, very strong. And to me, this has more intuition and magic. It's the other picture is more about rootedness, but this is more about kind of releasing, letting go, and that whole magic that comes with the transformation when you lean in and surrender and let the change happen.
Exactly. So for those people that work with the chakras, as an example, and you mentioned that, then there's ways that you could pull out different pieces of art that were representative of the colors of the chakras as we traditionally identify it, because sometimes people reflect with different colors for those chakras. And then we have the 5-element theory. So then you have the 5 colors from there, and the opportunity to be able to pull pieces of art in that regard and play with it. Each image really does, when you spend a little bit of time with it, even if I go back to the first card that we put up, if you spend a little bit of time with it and start to reflect or even acknowledge some of the colors that are within it, how it pulls you and the way the vision goes. And we typically put the card always in the same way because
I'm gardening right now, I see that kind of like as different layers of the earth and the sea coming out of the earth. Whereas I might look at that in the winter and see a quilt to warm me. Right. And so I think we need to kind of trust that we receive the message at the time that we need to receive the message when we look upon the art, if that makes sense.
Because we still have what happens when we turn it. And what happens, even though the affirmation was put on it in a particular direction, what happens when we change it?
You see, now I see a mouse.
And I see the Eiffel Tower.
So I think that's the important message. Like, art is healing, but if you think about, even if you go to a place that, like a waterfall, some people will notice the water, some people will notice the stone, some people will notice the forest around, some people will notice what they hear, what they see, what they smell, what they taste, what they touch. So I think that the important piece is not to is that there's affirmations to guide us and intentions to guide you, but it's your healing journey.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm. So if we go to the spine deck,
yes.
let's dive into the spine deck a little bit, because we ended up creating some of the cards so that all of the thoracic part of the spine has all the representative artwork on it. And then cervical, all 7 of those points. Lumbar, we did lumbar 1 and 2, and not going down into 3, 4, and 5, just because they're fused. And we were looking at the resonance that happens in the bones. So by the time you get into that fused structure, that's a little bit different. So we weren't focused quite on that. But if we pull up like the full spine resonance,
Yes.
we have the opportunity to have the representation
When I
across
look at that, I want to sit
all of them.
straighter.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Doesn't it just pull you up? I
When
know.
you first sent this to me, I remember when you first sent this to me, when you took my art and put it in this schema, and I remember for days I could feel my spine like breathing and stretching and realigning, and how powerful that was, that a piece of like art or putting art together so that it would help align the spine, how powerful that was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know for both you and I, we've played with color, we've played with art, but when we brought in interactive, intentional art, it just really transformed what both of us were doing with clients or classes or presentations, how we could bring that forward. And you're right. When you put up that picture, the body just wants to, it wants to engage with the art. And we don't have to do anything. That's the exciting part. We don't
Just
have to have
receive.
willpower or determination or strength or on any of those other thoughts. Just be open and let it do what it does. Yeah.
And and sometimes I sit on the canvases so that I can receive the energy as I work, because a lot of us are sitting and working today, and I think it's our bodies need support to do that because we're online so much. And the other thing that I sometimes suggest to people is that you just carry the card in your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So carry it in your back pocket, carry it in your knapsack. Like um, sometimes I put the canvases on the floor and I stand on them. You've used them in your dance studio. I think that especially if there's a part of your body that um, is teaching you that it has a pattern it wants to release, or you're experiencing pain or stuckness, or like when
This
I
is,
had vertigo last fall, I used some of the movements from the other deck, which we're going to get to help me rebalance and recenter. So go ahead.
hmm. I
You
was
have
going to
something
say,
here.
this is T12 in its canvas form. And I
Yes.
actually put it under my feet before we started today. And as soon as I did, my feet were like activated. They get that tiny little bit of buzz in them that just says I'm
Yes.
alive and well. And so that's sitting down at my feet at the moment, bringing that art in. Yeah.
And art for centuries has influenced our mental, emotional, and spiritual selves.
Hmm.
I think the piece that is it's the movement piece and the somatic piece that we're also bringing in, and I think that that's something that sometimes you have to suspend disbelief
Hmm.
and have faith that if you look at something and your back moves a bit easier and your hips move a bit easier, and you've received the intention in the art to support that, not to question it, to just receive it.
Hmm. Hmm. So the spine deck, which was the first deck that was put together, is a result of a chart I was working on for my Chi integration program. And I was trying to identify how the spine could be healthy, I guess is the best way to say that. You could do it through movement, but I really wanted to know how I could bring more information forward and what were the emotional components that went with the different parts of the spine. So I was just looking at the chart that I created, and the chart has several columns in it, which has chakras and spiritual points, spiritual connections, emotional integration and awareness, things that happen within the chakra and things which happen on the outside of it, and then the frequencies, the notes that are corresponding to it, and then its whole note function, because we have our whole notes, which we identify in our chakras as C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and that comes up the spine. But we also have connectors, so C to C sharp to D, and those little connectors had important pieces too. The research that came with all this started with the encyclopedia of the energy body that Cindy Dale has compiled. And it was a great way to start looking at some of the other resources that were out there. But then Dr. June Wider's work came in from Song of the Spine, and then Dr. Randall Robird's emotional rib heads. And the rib heads have come up several times. So that's the connection of the bone as it comes into the chest, those pieces in there, and they have their own resonance on top of what goes on in the spine. And then all of that was compiled with an idea of how can we represent all of this information with art. And so people don't have to look at this confusing chart and try to figure it out, but they could actually engage with it in a way that was going to be supportive. And that
Can you
led us
give
to
an
Tanya.
example of a spiritual point, Michelle?
Yeah, so if we looked at, well, thoracic 12, right, is what I had picked. So for thoracic 12, the spiritual connection for it is the balance of polarities. And polarities are when we have a change in the weather, people will often reflect on. They can tell by their knees or their joints or their hands, their feet, that something's happening in the weather, it's going to rain. And then they'll say, I feel that in my body. And polarity has to do with how the ions are reflective through our systems. And when we get a little bit more one direction over another direction, we feel an imbalance. And so thoracic 12 is an opportunity to bring balance back into that. Now knowing that, you and I are both thinking next storm. that artwork's coming up. We have male right side, and we have left brain, and we have linear. It's a linear patterning. And those would be the emotional integrations and awarenesses that you could reflect on. Does that help a little bit?
But the bottom line is the art is created to support the spine to be in balance.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we showed the one for that had all of the artwork for the spine. If we go to lumbar resonance, we had only chosen the two. So then you end up with those two pictures together. And this has to do with the balance of right and left, yin and yang, energy in, energy out. And for a lot of us, we hold on tight. We don't want to let go. We try to control. Ego takes over. And this is a way to actually, looking at lumbar resonance, the way to see if you could find a balance with that. Is it okay for me to let go of the things that I don't need to control? And then how can I allow for things to come towards me that I'm not even aware could be assisting me? And that gives us a nice balance that we try to bring forward. And then we have this one, thoracic resonance. All that is and all that is possible emanates with pulsating waves through the body and the soul. Breathe, center, and ground to keep the connection optimized. So you were talking about how you first started with centering and grounding with it, and this provides us with the opportunity for the whole center part of the spine to come into a balance. Yeah. All right. Anything else you think we should talk about for the spine?
Well, just that this is the last one, the cervical resonance. Living with courage and conviction inspires a creative, intuitive approach to all that is touched by your hand and voiced by your actions. So this is how we show up in the world, how we express ourselves, how we trust our intuition, and how we connect with the divine. So that's for the upper spine.
And I'm hoping, as you were reading that, and people are listening or watching, that they're noticing their response, which would have been a sigh or a deeper breath. And that's that indication that something is shifting in the system. Sometimes it can be a blink. It could be a yawn.
A yawn?
Exactly. And so when you have those kinds of involuntary reactions, they're not ones you control, they just happen. That tells you that you've already explored a shift. And you did that just because Tanya was reading the affirmation, holding the card up. That's all it took. Yeah. Beautiful. Okay, so if we go from there, let's go to the second deck. This one is Affirmations for the Energy Field. And I should point out that there's 4 different decks. We put them all together because they do create a full package. But each deck has its own instruction cards because there's different ways that you can use the art, and we wanted you to be able to explore it. So each deck has something a little different. Not saying you have to keep that instruction to that deck. You could explore it through the other decks too, but there are different suggestions. Okay, do you want to talk a little bit about what this deck really means, Tanya?
I'm just trying to find my card. Is this the meaning of the divine deck?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this deck is really about your connection to the divine, and we can call it God, universe, source, spiritual flow, spiritual connection. But it's really recognizing your spiritual purpose, the greater meaning to why you're here. So, for example, this is one of the cards in that deck. And this is the 11th chakra, which is your hands and feet, and basically how your hands and feet support you to move forward in your purpose for being here. Every step we take, every gesture we make is coordinating with our soul's purpose. Lean into love and light and trust your inner guide and wisdom. So this deck is really helpful for those on a spiritual journey, trying to find meaning and support, and really thinking about how your spiritual journey affects your body. Because we all know sometimes when we do something that's out of alignment with our soul or our purpose or what we know to be true, we can feel that in our bodies. And we can also have what I call stuck energy. You can feel a bit off. Everything goes wrong that day. You spill your coffee, you trip over the carpet, and you can tell that you're out of energetic alignment. And meeting the divine is the deck that can help you realign and reconnect with that alignment. And this is one of my favorite cards. Whoops, it's thoracic, sorry. This is one of the softer ones. Because sometimes, finding your soul purpose isn't necessarily like, I'm going to make this 5-year plan and I'm going to follow every step on it to follow my soul purpose. Sometimes it's a gentleness. Sometimes it's just noticing. You notice a color. You hear something on the radio. You stumble across a book that means something to you. You have a random connection with a stranger, and all of a sudden you're receiving information or a message or a nudge or a whisper from your heart that you hadn't even noticed. So this card says, step forward into your future. All you need will be provided. Movement is medicine and the path is clear. And this is, again, the 11th chakra, the left foot, and the left side of your body is where you receive in information and where you kind of also care for yourself, because the right side is more about what you give out to the world and what you offer. And I think meeting the divine is about receiving in what you need so that you can offer what you want. But it's not a thing you force. It's a gentleness. There's a gentleness, a flow to it. And sometimes we just need to stop and breathe and listen. And these cards are, the meaning of the divine deck is great to just stop and breathe and listen.
And that one feels, you can feel the lightness, the way the colors all come together.
Yes.
It, especially when you're trying to push forward with an agenda. And
Mm.
like you said, hit that life's purpose. But if you start to just look at the open spaces, the lightness, it takes
And
the
this tiny
pressure
little
off.
heart when you turn it upside down.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So much fun.
And sometimes we get big messages when we meet the divine, of course. But I think, we're receiving messages all the time that support us, but it's hard sometimes to hear that because there's so much noise when we're under stress, or there's been a huge impact after COVID on into people's mental health, and sometimes it's hard to step back and listen when we're stressed or overwhelmed or anxious, and hopefully the deck can support people to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was definitely no coincidence. It was divine intervention that the deck happened during the pandemic, and
Yes.
and supported us,
Uh-huh.
through all the challenges we were having taking our work online. Yeah, and receiving work online too. Yeah, it's a beautiful deck. There's for those people that know about the tiens from Tai Chi, we have lower, middle, and upper tien, so it's explored that way. We have the assemblage point. We have the kundalinis. We have the different chakras, as you were talking about, for hands and feet. And we have the hara line. So there's, and the auric field. I better not forget about the whole BioField. So, and we have layers of the auric field. So there's different ways of looking at it and how information comes from the outside in or from the inside out. And what is our protective shield or our ability to monitor what's coming and going. All of that is reflected in this particular part of the deck.
Yeah, this is one of the kundalini cards. I always see this as a person kind of looking forward. And this is red kundalini. Our inner feminine and masculine dance together in perfect rhythm like one, unified in their dance, providing inner stability and strength. So even when I look at that, my whole body goes.
Yep. And
Because
there's the.
we forget sometimes to breathe out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I was doing too. It was just like, oh, there's that big sigh, and out comes the breath. I always see that one as some of the sunsets we have here in Cape Breton, because sometimes we have that ball of fire, red,
Mm-hmm.
purple, orange, depends on the night. And then we have these clouds that come through with those purpley blue colors. And there's just this rainbow that happens kind of with that. And so that's what that one always reminds me of. Mm-hmm. Okay, shall we move forward from there?
Sure.
So next one, if we pull affirmations for the fascia and the spine. Tanya sent me these lovely photos one night while I was cooking and said, you're supposed to have this series of art. And I said, oh yes, that's exactly the fascia. And off I went. I was like, the answer popped right out of my mouth. And then I continued cooking. And then I thought, how did I answer that question so quickly? And how did I know that that's what it was going to be? But it was so clear about the opportunity that we have with this deck to take what happens in the resonance of each of the vertebra in the spine, and then how that information travels at the speed of light through the body to all of the organ systems and tissue. And so that's what this deck reflects, is that fascia spine flow. And if you have two vertebrae that have jammed together, the frequency of each bone is no longer going to be able to resonate at its true frequency. And the space within that joint is not going to be able to hold its frequency. So What happens to the fascia then is there's a diminishing of the kinds of information that can be transferred. And so this is to support speeding up that information transfer and helping the body to realign and be balanced in a quick way. If I
An example of that would be if you get an intuitive message about something that you think you should tell someone you love, or that you feel that it would be supportive to them or they need to hear it, to trust that because it's your intuition connecting with your voice and to speak it.
Mm-hmm.
That would be an example of that kind of flow.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Or two, you're having a conversation and you get those intuitive hits.
Yes.
And you start writing notes about not even what you're talking about or listening to, but all of a sudden you have these downloads coming through. That's that speed of light information. And also the ability to compile information in a way that if we were trying to control our thoughts and our brain patterns to bring in some decisions, this brings in things we may not have even thought about, plus the information of the person we're connecting with or the ideas we're hearing about, into things that we may have been working on, but we didn't have all the information. This is a way for it to come to us in a different way. Yeah. So if I pull this one here, I like this because of the way the colors, some of them have very distinct, like heart is all green, but this one has purple on it, and then it fades to oranges and yellows, kind of a pink, and then it has the white lines that really clearly, for me, show that ray of information going out. This one is related to the note of D. When the soul embraces the body and the senses are in full awareness, the experience of life opens the gift of being human on earth, open to the fullness of living. This has to do with the lumbar spine, so that's down at the hip, and the sacral chakra. Yeah. This deck with dancers has been very powerful for allowing different parts of the body to open up. Like in the hip, we're trying to do a kick or splits, or open up a movement pattern. The use of these cards and the use of the colors has been really helpful for that. And the same could be said for the shoulders. A lot of the seniors that I work with get a lot of frozen shoulder or hunched shoulders. And by pulling sometimes just the color that resonates for them, it's a way for that whole part of the body to actually expand and open. And it's a subtleness, just like looking at that spine deck in its entirety with all the pictures on it. This has that opportunity too to have you either sit up or open or expand in some way. Should we move to the next deck?
Sure. I'm just smiling because this deck, what happened was I took a picture of a window that was a solar window where the light was shining through it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started mirroring it and I went, wow. So you never know when you notice something, what you're actually noticing, because that one, I stopped and noticed the light going through the window and thought, that's beautiful. And that created a whole deck.
And I said, because at that time I was working on movement and the fascia, and it was so clear. There's that intuitive hit, right? Yeah. And that synergy. And for those people that are listening, Tanya and I we've known each other for over a decade. We've done lots of things together. This was the first time we did a project like this, and it was so interesting how it led us through all the pieces. It wasn't, we decided we were going to make a card deck. It really just brought itself forward.
It had an energy of its own.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like my art tells me what it wants to be, this project told me what it wanted to be.
Yeah. And even we put it together and you and I use it completely differently, but also we've been able to use it with other tools, and it keeps showing us other levels of itself, which is also fascinating. So if we go to the next one, the affirmations for the fascia matrix connections. So this one has like the pictures of the daisies on the front. This one, if you look at the instructions on this deck, it has to do with the cross-linking. So the instructions are to feel well, one part of the body is going one direction, what could be the complete opposite diagonal to that, and kind of stretching and expanding and then bringing it back together is the exploration. This one is all about the spaces in the body. So the space in the wrist, the knee, the ankle, between the toe bones, places you might not have really thought about where would there be space, but if there is space, as I mentioned before, that's where the bones have the ability to resonate at the frequencies that they want to resonate at. But then this lovely space creates the harmony point for it, the opportunity to expand, which is sometimes where we need that space in our day, that space in our lives to be present, to be open, to be listening.
And to pace ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because we get a lot of messages to fill that space, right? And not to leave anything empty or open. But in reality, we need that openness and that empty space to move well, to have the give, to do the, expanding and contracting.
And in our Tai Chi exercises, when you expand and contract and you create that open and closing effect, that's how you build and store energy. And sometimes people think about expending energy because that's what we've been taught to exercise like, is, you want to work everything hard, put that energy out there. But in Tai Chi, it's about cultivating energy so that when you want to go do something, you already have that energy built up, it's ready to go, and then you can use it, or you can build more because you could expand and contract in what you're doing. One of the ones that comes up a lot with all the different movement classes is this card. So I thought I'd share this one. Yeah, right. Open the spaces within. When we focus on connections in a linear fashion, we miss the power of the space between and around. And that's even us with our to-do lists. Try to
That's
get
a picture of one of my dahlias.
Of your
But
dahlia.
every time when it was in bloom. But every time I look at it, I see a woman.
Yeah.
Not the other way. Yeah.
I always see just this vastness of space in this nice dark spot in the center.
Yeah.
And just reminds me, you've got all these things going on, but there's more. There's more behind all the stuff going on. And then looking beyond some of that. Yeah. Is there a card that usually resonates with you from this deck?
I always think of this as double tulips, and this time of year, I think. But this is the wrist, and I think sometimes because my whole life lesson is about loosening my grip and trusting, and I like to hold on, not let go. It's kind of my life lesson. We all have life lessons. That one's mine. And to me, I think this is like, I just see expansion here, letting go, what happens when you release. And this is the wrist card. Infinity wraps around your fingers and connects you to your actions. All is possible when the balance of grip has tenacity and passion. But it's the balance of the grip. It's not the holding tight. It's the, So that's one of my favorite cards.
In Tai Chi, there's a move called White Snake puts out his tongue. And in that one, you have one hand that comes out flat and the other one's in a fist. But just as they pass each other, I'm hoping you can still hear. Okay, just as they pass each other, it creates a spiral action. but you can't get that spiral action if you're holding tight in this grip and you want to hold this. It actually stops and your alignment sits. And it's when you let go and open, all of a sudden it creates. So that just reminded me of that. And that's a movement where you make a subtle change and everything is different, which is the same with the deck of cards. You choose a card, you use affirmation, you have a reflection, set an intention, and everything changes.
And so much happens on that subtle energy level.
Mm-hmm.
Because the healing takes as long as it takes, and you can't force it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm. One of the cards that comes up quite a bit too from this deck is the hyoid bone. And I love this picture because of the way some of these blue pieces come off. It reminds me of the spine, but it also reminds me of expansion. And the hyoid bone is the only free-floating bone we have in our body. And it's held in its place by the balance of muscles and tissue. And if we start to clench our jaw, our neck is tight, there's our driving posture or our computer posture, it can lock that hyoid bone up. And if it doesn't float freely, that can change how we make decisions, can change what we say, it can change our judgmental thoughts, things that will come out and you wonder why you did something. And sometimes it's just because everything's so tight. The affirmation for this is the journey of balance and wholeness is reflected through the vibrancy of this bone. Open and suspended, all is possible. So that's one that comes up quite a bit. Okay, Tanya, that's all the way through the pieces here. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you use the deck? And we'll just give everybody some ideas of how this could be supportive to what they're doing.
Well, one of the things I do is do readings for people that looks at the past, the present, and the future, and how they're going to get there, and I choose cards based on that. I use the cards when I am doing a healing session or a supervision session with counselors as either to support their goal at the beginning of the session or to support at the end. I might ask them their self-care goal and I'll choose a card to support that goal. I might ask them if they have a question or something that they want to focus on over the next couple of weeks, and I'll choose a card to support that. I might choose a card for myself if I'm having a struggle with a situation and I don't know how to move through it, or if I have pain in my body and I want to know what my body needs or how to release it. I also use it, I think, as an exercise for mindfulness. If I'm not feeling centered or grounded, I might stop, inviting into space to choose a card. I also choose it to support an intention either for my week or my day. What will support what I want to accomplish in the week ahead, what will support what I want to accomplish today. And I've also used it for writing. If I'm doing a writing or creative project and I'm blocked, I pick a card to help me.
There's just a few ideas in there.
Oh, is
Isn't
that
that
too
amazing?
many?
This is so amazing, right? We don't have to be blocked. We don't have to be stuck. We don't have to stay in the same place. It's just so easy. So easy. Yeah, that's beautiful.
I also think, and we talked about this earlier, it doesn't just have to be for individuals. Like I've chosen cards for businesses, for families, for relationships, for spaces, because sometimes people can feel that that a space doesn't have good energy. That's the best way to explain it, I think. And so to choose a card even for them to focus on to help clear a space,
Mm-hmm.
which I know it may be beyond. We're always focused on healing and being individual, but I think healing can also be for situations, and healing can be for places, and healing can be for I think our businesses. Some of the people watching may be what we call soulpreneurs, and we have Michelle and I are both in a book called Soul Biz. But I think businesses have energy, families have energy, um, and I think that the cards can be used for all of those things too. Pets, choose a card for your pet, or put the deck on the floor. I'm sure your cat or your dog will quite happily pull a card or step on a card or point to a card.
Flip it off my
Um,
desk, yes.
and if you have a project like I do, I do a lot of writing, and sometimes a card can be a guide for a project, especially because it's so easy to get stuck. For you can call it your muse being blocked, or you can call it, not knowing the next step for your business or however you wish to communicate it or feel it. I think the cards can help with that as well.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And when I'm working with them, if I've set a goal, of course, the goal is only going to be able to have access to the information that I know. So when I'm looking for outside assistance and I just have myself to talk to, then it's easy to go to the deck and see what kind of messaging will come in. But also that sets up things that usually my inbox arrives all kinds of interesting messages because I set up that idea. I know what my goal is, and then I also know that I'm looking for other information and I'm hoping people will send it. And sure enough, and it's in areas that I would never think about, which means my projects and my opportunities are bigger and different than I could have created.
And we never know how we're going to get messages. I still remember I was in Michelle's movement class, and for some reason, the color blue came up on one of the cards I picked. And so Michelle's suggestion was to think blue. So I went for a walk, and this is a true story. As I turned the corner in my little neighborhood, on the ground was a tube of blue paint that had fallen out of somebody's garbage. And I'm like, so the universe decided to remind me that when you said think blue, you meant think blue. I didn't know I was going to manifest a tube of spent blue paint on my walk, but there it was.
Right?
So
Oh,
think blue.
exactly. Exactly. So the ways that I've used it, my chi integration class, which is a class about how to balance the biofield in the body through movement, we start with setting a goal and bringing these cards forward. And one of my favorite things to do actually is not so much the individual sessions, which are powerful, but the group sessions, because we all have our goals and we all have the different cards that we pull. And sometimes we may have 8 or 10 cards that have come forward. That's a lot of information combined in a very specific and unique way. And what happens and transfers over the week is always so interesting and incredible because of that experience. And then I combine it with another deck. So I have the opportunity to do some action items to go along with the affirmations. And that I think has been some of the most profound ways of magnifying, what goal setting or intention setting can provide. I will use the deck with my podcasts, so helping put the intention right at the start of the podcast so that those people listening are getting a healing session while they're listening. It's not just a podcast, but they have the potential to be able to change whatever they came to the podcast to hear or be a part of, and to be part of resolutions, or in the case of season 3, it's transformations. So that's another way that I like to bring it forward. And I really enjoy going to the spaces of the body and then linking up the spaces to the fascia, and then linking up the fascia to the actual bone, and being able to kind of work my way through the body and link up parts of the body that I might not have thought of. And in chi integration, we use we call them activation points. So where the greatest energy is sitting, finding out which part of the body or the biofield is holding that particular bit of information, or we're looking for the space that could use support, and then where is the other space that could provide support, and putting those two cards together. Yeah, there's just so many ways that we can combine and play, and in workshop settings, we have the opportunity to help people explore it, but also to measure it and feel the difference. So as we're suggesting the ideas now, it's a great way for you to take the deck, play with it, see what it does for you, but then know that if you want to work with the two of us to bring something forward and to expand your ideas and opportunities with the deck, that's also a possibility. Have you got
and we will be offering a course at some time in the future. So keep that in mind.
Do you have the book right beside you, by chance? And I just wanted, we showed you what the cover looks like, because it's the same as the card deck. But what I wanted to point out about the book is we had a lot of people who liked the artwork, liked the affirmations, but they also wanted to know what we infused within each piece of art. And this is where the interactive art is invaluable too, because it has the intentions that Tanya put together when she took the photograph and when she put the image together as she did. But then we have other intentions that we infused into the artwork as well. And so Tanya's just...
So for example, if you look at the 2 tulip one that I mentioned, the intention that we put in that was life, egoless, awareness, evaluation, standardization, compassionate holding, evolutionary guiding, and love. So that's all the intentions that are in that card.
So when you're looking at the artwork, you're engaged with the art, you're engaged with the color, you're engaged with those intentions that are there. But sometimes, depending on what kind of work you do or what kinds of ways you want to use the card deck, knowing that information might give you a way to explore deeper. Or if you're doing, like Tanya was commenting on, journaling or some writing exercises, this is a great way for you to bring some other ideas forward. So that resource is there if you're looking at, you want to dive deeper into the card deck. I think that's it. Hey, Tanya?
Thank you for your attention and your time.
We look forward to offering those workshops to you and exploring other ways that we combine with the other tools that the two of us use in both of the products that we produce, but the workshops also that we offer. And how can they find you, Tanya?
HeartLadyInspiration.com.
And I'm at dancedebut.com. And I'm also at CBT Company, CB, and then spelling out full words, T company.square.site. If you're looking for teas with intention, that's where you'll find those. Thanks so much, everyone.